Assalamu alaikum. Someone reminded me it was 14 years ago when I was invited to the gathering in Warwick University, and I presented Meetings with Mountains at that event, and it was 10 years after that before we actually published it. So it's a continuation now to present exemplars for our time. I know many of you have traveled from around the UK to be here today, and I'm sure some of you have even traveled further from other countries. We are extremely grateful for your presence, and I thank the organizers of this event for inviting me back here again. Unfortunately, my co-author on the Exemplars series and good friend, Michael Sugic, was not able to join us today because of ill health. Exemplars for Our Time was a continuation of my 50-year project, Meetings with Mountains, which I first, as I mentioned, showed here in 2009. Although I stand here alone in front of you, Exemplars was the work and collaboration of many people from around the world, including our beloved teachers, mentors, and their families. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Have you ever seen a face in a crowd on the street that took your breath away? A face so full of inner light that you felt a deep spiritual connection with that person? Or have you ever sat quietly with someone and slowly became aware that they have an incredible stillness emanating from their heart? This is that journey. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, O God, guide me to the one who can guide me to you, and open for me the doors of knowledge of you. We invite you today to join us in the search for every pious saint and those who walked in their footsteps. Habib Ali Jifri said in 2019, when we launched Meetings with Mountains, by looking and meditating on the faces of the saints and sages, you begin to enter into their presence and consequently into the presence of God. Sheikh Muhammad Iqbal Abbasi was the one who swept the Prophet's grave. For 10 years in Medina, he was allowed into the sacred chamber to sweep the Prophet's grave. A man of intense presence. Sheikh Marabat al-Hajj was the mountain in the desert. Also another man of incredible presence. Maulana Wahidin Khan from India was the ambassador of peace. The hidden one, Sheikh Muhammad Abu Bakr from Eritrea. The clear light of Sheikh Muhammad Ridwan from South Egypt. The blind retired lumberjack who fell for God, Sidi Ali, fakir and constant servant of the Zawiyah of Sidi Muhammad ibn Habib. Sidi Muhammad ibn Habib said, for the greatest of saints, there is neither action nor being other than the being and action of their Lord. The Damascene Quran teacher, Sheikh Abu Hassan Muhyiddin al-Qadri, who had never been photographed before. O God, vouchsafe us your love and keep us in the company of the ones you love. Where do you find the saints and sages? Saints and sages are hidden, but can be found in every country and every culture. Some are known and many are unknown. In Istanbul, Turkey, Muzaffar Azak sold books from a small bookshop. In a small town in western China, I noticed this man hidden in the crowd. In Lanzhou, a busy city in central China, the Imam laughed as I took his portrait. I was glad that he did. In a remote part of eastern China, this man had cared for his community for 50 years. Sheikh Ibn Arabi says in his Fusus that the last and the seal of the saints will be born in China, and his language will be the language of the people of his country. Mulli Hashim came from 3 generations of spiritual adepts, a humble and successful Moroccan businessman who even owned the patisserie shop. He always assured us that the path to God was easy. Mulli Hassan was an anonymous man with a large family who crocheted simple woolen hats for a living and who was totally intoxicated with the love of God. This Imam lived in the rose-growing region in the desert of South Morocco. He owned an old, dusty Cadillac, but preferred to ride his horse to the mosque. Sheikh Ahmed Fau was a great scholar hidden in the desert of Mauritania who lived with all his books in a tent. Haji Anwar Mansur was a director of a large girls' school in the jungles of Indonesia. Abdullah was a gatekeeper on the building site in Medina in Saudi Arabia. Sufi Abdullah Khan was a captured soldier during World War II, and in peacetime he worked in a steel foundry near Birmingham, fasting during the day and praying at night. Where are the female exemplars? We were always told the men are hard to find, but the women are even more hidden. It is rare to find at this time a female teacher whom men visit and take guidance from. Although she never accepted men as her followers, this female saint, Sayyida Fatima al-Yushratiya, was extremely well respected and lived through a very turbulent time in the Levant. In Turkmenistan, this saintly woman served the tomb of Sheikh Yusuf al-Hamdani for 60 years. The wives of Sidi ibn Habib served us food and drink whenever we visited the Zawiya. They knew us, but we never saw or knew them until much later. They were the hidden exemplars of service. In Multan, the city of saints in Pakistan, as I sat in a car waiting for friends, I was drawn to this unique woman, invisible to the people around her. By reading about the lives of the saints and sages of God, we can discover wisdom and guidance for our own lives. By looking at the outward forms, you can see the beauty of their spirituality. This is Sidi Muhammad ibn Habib in his 50s. And then in his late 90s, he was still active and still traveling. And finally, over 100 years old, still teaching in Ramadan, he passed away on his way to perform the Hajj. Habib Ahmed Mashul al-Haddad, around the age of 18, already an advanced student on the path. In his mid-20s, he attracted love from all who were graced by meeting him. In middle age, he continued to travel, spreading the peaceful message of Islam, even in remote villages in Africa. During his last stage of life, he emanated a peace and compassion that was undeniable. Sitting in the company of these exemplars can transform your life. Habib Omar Sumait was one of the people who transformed Habib Ahmed's life, and also the life of exemplar Sayyid Omar Abdullah. Muhammad Ali was gifted with deep knowledge of astronomy, and he spent his life with Sheikh Murabat al-Hajj. Farid is the proof of keeping good company. He spent his life with the Habaib of Hadramaut. Michael Sugic says in the introduction to the Exemplars series, companionship with learned sages and people of wisdom is more important than ever in a global society that is increasingly fractured, profane, and distressed. Even sharing a bowl of what I call organic water with the saints of Mauritania is keeping company. Or sitting outside the house of Habib Salih, the great saint of the island of Lamu in Kenya. Every minute you spend with your teachers is priceless, as it enhances the time you sit alone with God. Our lives are passing quickly. Ultimately, this journey we are all on is about the heart. Sidi Muhammad ibn Habib said in his Diwan, "Dear God, you are what I seek, my refuge from wrong and from injustice and deceit. You are my hope in answering my needs. You are the one who will save me from evil and harm. May blessings be upon the Prophet and his family and companions and those who have shown us his way." I would now like to introduce you the 9 monographs in this collection. Sidi Michael Sugic wrote the very important introduction to the Exemplars series, which features on the cover this beautiful face of the Saint Sheikh Abdul Shakur al-Jilani, who lived to be over 150 years old. Michael says in this introduction, "We have never before been so in need of spiritual exemplars, role models who can inspire us, and guide us through the wisdom, purity, and beautiful qualities of character, sublime actions, deep insight, and right guidance in these confusing and troubled times. He goes on to say there is something subtle, almost imperceptible, something rare and precious. This is the absence of the ego. Michael also researched and wrote about the life of Sidi Muhammad ibn Habib. Born in 1871 in Fez, he established his Zawiya in 1936 as a place for learning and teaching the practices leading to the purification of the heart and knowledge of God. He was 65 when he opened his Zawiya, an age when most men retire. In 1971, this venerable scholar, saint, still resided over his Zawiya. He now had reached his centenary. This would be his final year on the earth. Michael said when he set out to write this short biography of Sayyid Umar Abdullah, it dawned on him that although he was his student for 7 years, from 1981 until his death, he actually knew very little about his life. He never talked about himself much. Whatever personal information he did share was to impart knowledge and wisdom. He was always, in every moment, teaching, not only by word, but by example. Finally, Michael researched and told the story of Sufi Abdullah Khan, including uncovering 25 years of his earlier life that had been lost even to his family. Sufi Abdullah's teacher instructed him to go to Britain and to devote himself to calling his countrymen back to God and his messenger. When he received this instruction, Sufi Abdullah was filled with self-doubt, saying, "I am only an ordinary person. How can I perform such an important task?" "Zindapir," his teacher replied, "you are doing God's work and God will help you." Dr. Mustafa Badawi tells the beautiful story of Habib Ahmed Mashur al-Haddad. In quoting from one of Habib's discourses, he wrote, "All these perishable things, why were they called perishable? Money perishes, life perishes, oceans perish. They are all perishable, and God has called it in His Quran, this life of this world is but play and amusement. Perishable things you play and amuse yourself with for a while, and then either they leave you or you leave them." Sidi Hamza Yusuf tells the untold story of Sheikh Murabat al-Hajj, who in 1937 walked across Africa from Mauritania to Sudan, taking a boat to the Hijaz to perform the pilgrimage and visit God's messenger in Medina. When he finished, he walked back across Africa to Mauritania. Sidi Hamza, commenting on his later years, for Murabat al-Hajj, the sacred monotony of his life was his daily practice, a constant working on his presence with God, because if one is present with God, one is present with his creation. Sidi Karim Laham explores the amazing life of Sayyidah Fatima al-Yushratiya, whose father was a great sheikh in his own right. Sayyidina Fatima pleaded with Sheikh Abdullah al-Jaza, one of her great teachers, to allow her to come to him. Given his age, his reply was characteristic of such men. "That would never do, for even were I to be in India and you were to call for me, I would come to you walking. You are the daughter of my sheikh and spiritual guide to God. Glory be to him, the exalted." Sidi Samad Dajani explores the extraordinary life of Sheikh Salih al-Jafari. Sheikh Salih was recognized by his contemporaries as having reached the highest levels of mastery in jurisprudence. Those attending his Friday lessons felt that his discourses were inspired. Shams Friedlander, despite his current health at the time, and since writing this, he has now passed away. May Allah be merciful to his soul. Managed to bring together the life of Muzaffar Ozak, who lived during the period of Ataturk's rule in Turkey, when the Sufi tariqas and tekkes were banned. Even the wearing of turbans and scarves were forbidden. But despite that, they kept the spiritual traditions alive behind locked doors. And this is so it's a series of 9 books, as I mentioned, one introductory book, and then the others where we dive into the lives of these people, and they're all illustrated by pictures which either I took or we sourced from families and close people to them. And those who want them, I'll be signing books afterwards. Thank you for your patience.
There was also a fear that the Third World War III would break out. Remember all the wars in Vietnam, Cold War, there was a lot going on. But then, the 60s, what they called the peace and love movement, hippies. And I think that was a kind of reaction against that. People felt oppressed, you felt oppressed. They just wanted to feel free. So writing, music, painting, photography, this is a whole other presentation, which maybe another 10 years I'll come back and do it, but I'm working on it at the moment. It's making sense of everything that happened and what I went on to do in my life.
Did you find spirituality almost?
I've heard this. People make this association. Photography is just an extension of me. So if I'm a spiritual being, which I am inspired to be, then I would hope my photography is an extension of that. We are spiritual beings, who have occasional human experiences. People think they're the opposite. They think they're human beings that have occasional spiritual.
Spiritual beings occasionally.
But we're forced to be here because we've got this body.
So I'd like the audience to go on a journey with me in this conversation. I was looking at these photos sitting there, and I was thinking, how does Peter flying, or you just come across a book, or read about someone, or someone says to you, I'm going to this place, join me. Who does this happen?
It is very positive or instinctive, you can say, to me. You know, someone said to me, how do I find my teacher? And I said, well, you have to ask God. His name is Al-Hadi. He's the guide. So he will guide you to the one who's meant to be your teacher. And so that's a journey that you're on. And you know, you may have a teacher that you do, with your partner. But you will meet also saints, and they're around, and most of them are very hidden. And because I'm a photographer, I spend a lot of time looking, watching, observing, yes. I have a very good relationship with my parent at the local park, because he sits and observes everything. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. But, yeah, yeah, he doesn't let you get too close.
Yeah. So when you, but let's say, can you give an example of how suddenly you stumbled upon someone and you make a decision, I want to make a photo of this set?
Yeah, it doesn't always happen that I get the chance to photograph them. I mean, there was one day I was traveling into London and I was thinking a lot about my father. And suddenly this man came up to me and started talking to me. And he followed me all the way to the underground and we were talking. And I really felt like it was my father talking to me from the unseen world. He was just, I guess, just one of God's people. They are around, we just fail to notice them. Sometimes, like in Mortan, when I was visiting a tomb there, I saw this man by the tomb and something drew me to him. I took a picture of him. And then also the lady, if you remember the lady I showed from Mortan. So I was sitting in the car and I saw her and, immediately I just picked up my camera and took a shot of her and she gave me that look, And someone asked me later, did you see anybody in Mortan? And I said, I don't know. I was there a very short time. There were two people I took pictures of. He said, send me the pictures. I sent them to him and he said, I showed those pictures to somebody. Both those people were special people. And that
they recognized them. They knew them.
That they were well-known saints in Mortan.
But let's zoom in. You said, I saw her and I knew there was something here.
Yeah,
Can you tell us,
strong.
what do you see? What do you feel?
I can't even describe it with words. It's just like that person is somebody special. I did meetings with mountains, took me 50 years, so I met a lot of people, and I got to photograph people who had never been photographed before. Why they agreed to let me photograph, I don't know, but maybe they trusted me. Many of them passed away after I took their pictures, which was very concerning for me, because I thought, if the word gets out, no one's ever going to let me take their pictures. but
When Peter Sanders takes a photo of you.
But somebody who's wiser than me said, no, they were about to die. They knew they're on their way out, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So that was like my job for 50 years to photograph these people. And I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not like the Vatican making a stamp, all these people are the awliya of Allah. I don't know. I'm not in a position to make that statement. But for me, they were special.
It's a feeling.
It's a feeling, and when I met those people, something happened. I got something from that meeting.
Yeah.
And that helped me on my journey.
Yeah. And so let's say it also made me recall scholars traveling for knowledge, and in your case it's traveling to capture awliya, saints. Is it also maybe maybe the ambition or a niyyah to preserve those people also, so other generations can still connect with them? Because sometimes we think that the time of awliya has passed.
Absolutely. And I think since I published Meetings with Mountains and Exemplars, young children have a very strong connection with those books. And parents have told me I find my son or daughter just sitting and looking at their faces. And I think, you know, I grew up in the 60s. Music was the big thing of that time. But I think images now is a language that talk to the young. And that's why, you know, we have iPhones and things, you know, this instant to be able to take pictures. It's almost like a language in itself. It needs very few words. And yes, it is important to document people's lives. And I hope by doing Exemplars, we were setting an example out to you that you should start documenting your sheikh's life. The family start gathering the pictures, because all these things get lost. And it's important that you preserve their lives, you know about their lives, because their lives are so important.
Of your family or of your shuyukh?
No, of the sheikhs, you know, the family around them, they have all these documents and they know all these things. Like with Sufi Abdullah's life, there was 25 years, the family didn't even know what happened to him when he was in the war and he was a prisoner of war. We found all the records in Pakistan and found all this stuff that no one knew about.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying now, do the work now, don't try and do it later. It's really important. The lives of these great people are important for the next generation and the next generation after them.
And now you also have this whole discussion, enjoy the moment, don't try to capture everything on your cameras. I mean, aren't there too many photographers out there? Everyone is a photographer nowadays.
Yeah. It is a distraction. I call photography a distraction sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it is a distraction, particularly now. And we used to laugh about when we were doing workshops in Turkey, and some Japanese man would run in and take, 100 pictures and run out again. And I just say to the students, he's going to enjoy Sultan Ahmed when he gets back to Japan. He's not in the present.
Must be a lucky shot in there.
Yeah.
So I must ask this question. For example, if you make a photo and someone you perceive as a saint is in front of you, how do you make such a photo? You don't say cheese.
No.
How does it happen?
Well, I mean,
do they pose? Do you await the moment?
I mean, it's really interesting. On one side, it's very, very difficult, because we live in the selfie generation, right? This is me at this place, this is me at this place. But those people don't have an ego. So when you take their picture, they don't have to put on a face.
Any smile, any
or a
face.
Smile at anything. They just are who they are. And that's, that's so important.
There is something you mentioned just now during your presentation. You said sitting in the company of saints can transform your life.
Yes.
How did it transform your life?
That's a very good question. I think when you're sitting in their company, you have to let go of your ego. And you have to open your heart to be very present and listen to every word that's said to you. Because maybe at the time, it might not mean anything, but it will mean something in 1 week's time, in a year's time, 5 years' time. You don't know. But whatever those people say to you, really take it in and sincerely think about it, because they are wisdom-based people, knowledge-based people. Whatever they say, and in that moment, is something for you to learn.
Do you have any personal example? something said in the moment which made sense
When
later on?
when I traveled to meet Sheikh Marabat al-Hajj in Mauritania, it took me 24 hours to get there, to drive there. And he lives in the middle of the desert. And they live in tents. And I was taken to meet him. Now, I don't speak Arabic. And he asked what my name was. And they told him, they told him my name, and then he said, "Who?" And then they said my name again, and he went wherever they go, right? So if it's the CIA, they go on the main computer frame, right, to check you out. But the awliya go wherever they go. And he was quiet for a minute, and then he said, "Naam, naam." And then he made this long dua for my protection and happiness and, various things, which were obviously very poignant to me. And to be honest, that was the end of the transaction. I don't speak Arabic, I couldn't converse with him. But, the rest of the time I just spent watching him, how he taught and how he carried himself. At that time he was all very, very old. He only ever slept 2 hours every night. He only ever drank camel's milk. And all the time, if he wasn't praying, he was teaching his students. Mm-hmm. And it was very powerful to watch, a man with such great presence like that and be in his company,
So if you would give us an insight, you had a spiritual and photography journey, kind of parallel to each other, maybe intertwined.
Yeah.
Where on that journey are you now? Could you say anything about it? As in, the journey never ends, right?
That's a very good question, and how do I ask it honestly? To speak honestly, this year I was working in Saudi Arabia. I worked with somebody called Dr. Abdullah Al-Qadi, who's doing a lot of work on the prophetic roots. And he spends a lot of time, he spent 25 years, he's a great scholar, working out where all these things happened, where exactly all these incidents happened in the Prophet ﷺ's life. And of course, we met many years ago, and he asked me to travel with him and do the photography, which is a great honor. But to me, to be honest, it's the hardest work I can ever do in my life. Mm-hmm. He took me to the place where the Prophet ﷺ met Abad. Abad wrote the most beautiful physical description of the Prophet ﷺ. It's considered the best.
Where's this place?
Sorry?
Where is this place?
On the Hijra route.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he was making the Hijra,
from Mecca to Medina.
Yeah. They went to this camp, and they asked for some goat's milk, and Abad said, "We only have an old goat. She hasn't given milk for many years." And the Prophet ﷺ went to her, milked her, and she gave milk. So he told me this whole story, right? So I was so excited to go to this place. When I get there, there is nothing there. It's like a sand hill with some shoots of grass coming out. And then how do I take a picture, right? Mm-hmm. It's like
because you need to have something in the frame.
Yeah, I've now got to tell that story in one picture. There was nothing there. And so it's like the hardest work I could ever do. And it's very intense. We're out in the desert, we're off grid, there are no services, no toilets, anything. And of course, this year, I still think I'm 25, I got really sick. And at Badr, of all places, I just got really ill, and I got an infection, and I was dehydrated, and so since that period, I've had a period of illness, right? Which happens to everybody, right? But it's just like, okay, this is a different stage of my journey, right? It's still part of my journey, but how do you deal with illness? Illness is from God. Do you go into a complete panic and think, I'm dying, I've got to say, no, you just have to accept it, and you have to find a way to cure yourself without surgery and drugs if you can, because
Yeah.
that seems the main recipe of.
So, but did you get the photo?
Yeah.
Oh, you got it. You were happy about the photo.
Well, I'm never happy
In the
with
desert?
my photos.
No, you're not?
No, that's just one instant, though. I mean, this is like throughout the day for 2 weeks, endlessly.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's really difficult work, because there isn't something there for me to really.
I remember some of your advices when we were in the art of seeing, like don't cut a shadow of something, because the shadow is part of that being.
Yes.
Like a palm tree, and the shadow is part of the palm tree. Don't cut it off in your photo.
Yeah.
Or wait for the scene. People will walk by. The scene will set itself.
Yeah.
You have to have really, like, almost Sufi traits to be a good photographer.
You need to have a lot of
Tawakkul,
patience.
trust. You have to have patience a lot. Sabr.
Yeah.
Mashallah.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us something about your current project?
Okay.
What can we expect from you?
Again, it's another one of these projects. I had the idea for it in 1970. It took me 30 years. I was always fascinated by the fact that there were Muslims in places like China and Russia. It took me 30 years to finally go to China and photograph the Muslims in China. I've made 4 trips now. One from Beijing all the way to Kashgar and back again. And I'm working on the book now. We will publish it next year, inshallah. It's called Heaven and Earth and the 10,000 Things, the Lives of Muslims in China. And it's really finding the links between Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, and Islam. Those early Sahaba and sons of Sahaba that traveled to China, they were in China 60 years after they migrated to Medina. So that's how soon, the Muslims were in China. The story is amazing. I went to all the early burial places of the Sahaba.
The Sahaba, they're buried there. The tombs are there.
Yes. And it's been an amazing journey for me, and I really want to share it because for me it's really important. The Chinese didn't become Arabs. They became Muslims, and they are Chinese Muslims.
Exactly.
That's the important
thing. They didn't Arabize. They
didn't Arabize. And so the early mosques look like Taoist temples. I mean, it's just, they're some of the most amazing mosques I've ever seen.
Just like the Pakistanis, we're very Pakistani Muslims.
Yes.
We eat salan and biryani in the mosque.
Yes.
We didn't Arabize.
Yes, that's great. It's so important because you need to keep that identity and be Muslim.
So, is there going to be another Art of Seeing?
Well, I hope so. I'm waiting for Faisal. He's threatening doing
he's
one
somewhere
in
backstage.
December.
We'll ask him in a bit. Yeah.
I longed, COVID put a stop to it, and I can't wait to get back. I really enjoy doing them. They're really fun for me, and I enjoy meeting the people and sharing photography. Yeah.
On behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank you very much for not only your presence here, but also the fact that through your eyes and actually through your lens, we can see some of what you've seen and meet the scholars and mountains. You have preserved them for us and for the Ummah, actually, I must say, for the Ummah later on. Thank you very much. Do you have any final advice for the attendants here? They have one more day tomorrow, today and tomorrow. They came for the presence of Shaykhul Islam as well.
Yes.
And you have traveled as well. Based on your experience, what would you advise in the company of a saint?
Well, I was fortunate enough to photograph Sheikh Tahir Qadri a few years ago. And I don't know if anyone's seen the pictures yet, but it was very, photography is a way of meeting people. And so it was a great opportunity to meet him and sit with him for a while. I think, enjoy the company. The thing about these events is that people come together. You're meeting your sheikh, but also you're meeting his followers. And that's, by extension, they're your teachers as well. So it's, these events are very important. Don't mistake them, they're very important.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you to give a very big, warm applause to Sidi Peter Sanders. And something, please stay seated, remain seated, I would say. There is a segment right now starting, a short segment, just I think 20 minutes. It will start right away. And also I must mention that Sidi Peter Sanders' books are available right outside of this venue, so you can look at them and buy them as well for yourself in your own collection. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we're going to just begin this next segment. We are very fortunate we have a delegation from East Java, the second largest province of Indonesia. So this next segment is quite important for Minhaj al-Quran as a family, as an organization, that we're giving this honorary award. So can I please request if everybody do take the seats? We're going to begin in the next 2 to 3 minutes. We're just waiting for some of our brothers and sisters to enter the hall. So can I ask everybody to please kindly take the seats, and inshallah we will begin the award ceremony, after which there'll be a small break, and inshallah the second lecture of His Eminence Hazur Sayyidi Shaykh al-Islam. So can I ask once again, very kindly, as the members and supporters and participants of Al-Hidayah, we give our guests that have traveled many thousands of miles to be with us here today, in their honor, to award them. If we could please kindly take our seats, and inshallah we'll begin this ceremony very shortly. Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most kind, we send salutations and praise upon the Master, upon our Master, our beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can I officially welcome our distinguished guest and delegation from East Java, Indonesia, on behalf of Al-Hidayah, on behalf of Minhaj al-Quran and Minhaj Welfare Foundation. We are very honored to have Her Eminence, the Governor of East Java, Ibu Khafifa Indar Parwansa. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to attend this noble event in your honor. And inshallah, you will have the opportunity to hear and see our distinguished guest of honor in today's event. Brothers and sisters, distinguished guests, Minhaj Welfare Foundation, as you're well aware, is a charitable and humanitarian arm of Minhaj al-Quran International. And for more than 30 years now, we have been serving humanity around the world. And part and parcel of our serving humanity is focusing on education and eradicating extreme poverty. Over the past couple of years, Minhaj Welfare Foundation has managed to merge relationships with various countries. Alhamdulillah, Minhaj Welfare Foundation has had the opportunity to visit Indonesia. And today we've had some very important discussions in terms of how Minhaj al-Quran as an organization can foster better relations with the largest Muslim populated country in the world, Indonesia. Inshallah, we are hoping to see an exchange program of young British scholars, young British Muslims and young British Muslimas being able to travel to Indonesia and to see how Indonesia Islam is practiced. And likewise, young British ulama, young Indonesian ulama from East Java will always also visit the UK and see how Islam is practiced here. They'll understand the fabrics, they'll understand the culture,